We are approximately 48 hours from the NHL Trade Deadline. There's still lots of rumblings and lots of deals that we might see happen during that time frame. Today we're looking at the latest rumors surrounding teams like Toronto, Vancouver, Pittsburgh, New Jersey, Vegas, and a whole lot more. We'll jump into all the latest rumors coming up next. So welcome back to Liberty here, Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we've had lots of trades so far. We're likely going to get a bunch more. Kind of feels like right now it might be the calm before the storm. It's recording this on Saturday afternoon. We're about 48 hours ahead of the NHL deadline. It's been a little bit of a lighter, quieter day so far than we've had in the past few days. Not to say that there couldn't be more activity later today, but we might see a bit of a slowdown, I think, before we head into Monday, where there's still hopefully be lots of activity to discuss. Now let's kick things off with the latest on the Toronto Maple Leafs possibly trading defenseman Tyson Barrie. Now, I don't think the Maple Leafs are out there actively shopping Barrie, but they've certainly begun to get a lot of phone calls on his availability in the last number of days. Lots of teams have been seeing the fact that things have not really worked out the best there, and that the Leafs are looking for help on the blue line and trying to make their offers. Now, there's several teams that apparently have been rumored to have been reaching out and have been having preliminary discussions with the Leafs, and that list includes teams like the Hurricanes, the Flames, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Vancouver Canucks. Now, of course, we've talked about the link between the Canucks and Barrie before. They came close to trading for him in the offseason before the Maple Leafs pulled that deal off with the Avalanche, and it was rumored that maybe a guy like Troy Stecher would be involved, but I really don't see the Leafs trading Barrie for Stecher. I think they might have interest in Stecher. I wouldn't rule that part out, but not a one-for-one type of deal. The Canucks would have to include more than that. And at the same time, it's not going to make the Maple Leafs better on the blue line, which is their main area of concern at the present time. So I'm not really sure that deal is super realistic right now without some other moving parts or other things, maybe a third team being involved or something to that effect. Vegas now, they're a little bit of a stealth team. They traded Cody Eakin yesterday to the Jets, so he's gone back to Winnipeg where he's originally from. So that's a pretty good move for Vegas, good move for Winnipeg too, I think. Gives Vegas some extra cap space, some more flexibility, and many believe that if they were to look into acquire a guy like Barrie, that cap space might be helpful in helping re-sign him to an extension. And that might be the only way they actually pull a deal off here would be to do that, because they've also been rumored to be adding on the blue line as well. They were previously linked to Hawks defenseman Erik Gustafsson, and that might be a more realistic option for them right now rather than giving up a whole lot more to obtain Tyson Barrie, because for the Leafs to trade Barrie, they need another defenseman back who can play a similar role but maybe fit better with their team, and Vegas is looking to add on their blue line, not subtract. So even though they have the space to make it happen, again, I'm not sure the resources are there for what the Leafs are going to want to make that happen. Now, there's been some other talk regarding the Flames. They might have been offering TJ Brodie in a deal straight up for Tyson Barrie, but I don't see the Leafs doing that either. Again, I like Brodie as a defenseman. I think the Leafs would possibly have interest in him, but I think it's going to take more than just Brodie to get Barrie out of Toronto as well. So it's difficult to say what kind of package the Flames could put together to possibly lure Barrie, but I think they'd have a better shot than the other two. And lastly here, the Hurricanes are the other team that's being linked to them, and I'm not really sure that they have what the Maple Leafs are going to want either, because the Hurricanes are looking to add on the blue line too, so they're not going to be subtracting in order to add Barrie. They're already looking to replace a guy like Hamilton, which Barrie could do if he plays to his potential and fits there, but just not really sure that it's really going to work out, because the Hurricanes are not big into rental players either, and that's what he would be without signing an extension here right now, and I'm not sure they'd really be in a situation to do that either. So I guess will remain to be seen. We've seen TSN skyrocket Tyson Barrie all the way up to number 5 on their trade bait board, so clearly TSN insiders have a pretty strong belief that there's a really high probability that he could be traded. Besides the teams that are being linked to the Leafs in that report, there are other ways to make this happen, and it would have to be that the Leafs maybe trade Barrie to one of these other teams, get some other assets that they could then flip to another team that then could give them the defenseman that they want. There are other defensemen they've been linked to or that have been on the market at least, including Matt Dumba in Minnesota. But Bill Guerin's made it known he wants a top 6 center iceman. The Leafs are not going to be giving that up, and I really don't think they're going to be able to obtain that for Barrie to then flip it for a guy like Dumba. But Dumba would be a great fit there, I think. There's Tony DeAngelo with the Rangers. He's still on a pretty cheap contract, going to be getting a big raise. Not quite clear that the Rangers are definitely going to be as big as sellers as we might have thought. They're only 4 points out of a playoff spot now, and things have been going well with the Rangers as of late. Last few games, they picked up some wins. I still think the odds of them making the playoffs are slim, but they're within reach, and the organization may not want to sell off too much if they have a shot to get in. And DeAngelo is a player that they definitely do not have to sell. The only thing, like I said before, that could consider them to trade him would be the fact that they have a lot of young defensemen on their team. They already have some big contracts like Brady Shea and Jacob Trouba. They may not want to have a third defenseman making a significant amount of money just yet, given that other guys like Adam Fox and others are going to be building their way up to that as well. And it's just, it's possible that he could get moved just because of that. And of course, they could get a good return to help with other areas of their team. Like in the forward group would be the primary thing that they'd be looking for. But again, it's not a move they need to make, and I just don't see that that's something that they're going to be pressured into. But looking at all the options and all the teams that are linked to him, without some other teams kind of jumping in here that might make more sense, I just don't know if there's a real solid, realistic option that is just, makes too much sense to pass up. So personally, I think the odds of him moving are lower than what they have him, but I guess we'll have to remain to be seen over the next 48 hours. So again, I think the odds of them getting this done are probably slim just because of the logistics and just the better need, not necessarily being too obvious out there, but I guess we'll see what they can pull off. There could be other teams that are not being linked or not being mentioned by insiders right now that could swoop in and make an offer that makes sense. And we very well could see a deal get done. Now, sticking with the Leafs, one player that has been reported they may be showing interest in, but they're not the only ones, would be Zach Bogosian, formerly now of the Buffalo Sabres. He did clear waivers today, so his contract will be terminated, and he'll have the next 48 hours to sign a new contract with another NHL team in order to be eligible to play in this year's postseason. If he does not sign a contract prior to that, then he will not be able to play in the playoffs. So we'll see if he goes to a playoff contender, which I'm sure that there'll be plenty that'll be interested just on the fact that they can sign him rather than give up an asset, and they probably can sign him for a fairly cheap contract for the remainder of this year before he becomes a UFA again after that. At least that would be my guess. I think after this year's gone, he would only get a contract for the remainder of the current season for now. But other teams have been interested as well. There's, besides Toronto, there's all the other teams that we've talked about that are looking for defensemen have all been kind of linked to some degree, and likely will at least check in with Bogosian's camp to see what it might take to bring him on and if he'd be a good fit there. But another player to keep your eye on here as well in the next couple days. Now, of course, we saw the Boston Bruins make a big splash here and acquire Ondrej Kase from the Ducks for David Backes, and I would say that it's pretty safe that they're probably not done. I think the Bruins are going to continue to add. It could be something less significant, or there still could be another fairly significant move. They're still being linked to Devils forward Kyle Palmieri. Of course, he's not a pending UFA, so he wouldn't be a pure rental. So that's the main player. I think it's pretty fair to say that they're probably out on Chris Kreider right now, that if they don't have their first-round pick anymore, and that's going to be something that the Rangers absolutely are going to want in any deal for Kreider if he is moved. So I think that ship has sailed, but a guy like Palmeiri is something that interests them, and I guess we'll see if there's anything that can be worked out there on a potential deal, but there's still reports that the teams are having conversations and the Bruins are at least checking in, kicking tires on the idea of acquiring him. They were linked to Blackhawks for Brendan Saad as well. And of course, the other player that they've been linked to is longtime NHLer Joe Thornton. Of course, started his career with the Bruins as well. There's been some talk that the Bruins wouldn't mind adding a veteran like him in their bottom six, and that he could probably be had for a cheap price. A couple players on the Bruins right now who could be used as trade bait, according to NHL insiders, to make any of these acquisitions happen would be defenseman John Moore or possibly forward Danton Heinen. They do have some other prospects that they may be willing to part with, but a couple guys like probably Stagnica and Vakanainen probably are players they don't want to part with, but we'll see what they need to do. I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that the Bruins are going to want to make sure they get that Stanley Cup this year. They lost in the finals last year. They're the NHL's top team right now, and they're going to be pushing hard to bring the Stanley Cup home to Boston. Of course, we've seen tons of defensemen move so far, but one guy that's kind of gone under the radar and hasn't been moved yet is the Devils defenseman Sami Vatanen, and I do think the odds of him getting traded are very high. Obviously, the market's been set on many of these guys. Fair to say, probably looking at a second-round pick and a prospect, or maybe a second and a third, or something to that effect. He's a pending UFA. Good puck-moving defenseman. He's gained some good playoff experience in the past with the Ducks, so I think he could be a valuable piece added to some of these teams that are still out there on the market. So many of the teams we already discussed that were inquiring on Tyson Barrie were also inquiring on Sami Vatanen as well. Could be other options, except I would probably rule out Carolina just because he's a rental, but based on reports that the ownership doesn't want to do that. But at the same time, other teams like the Flames, the Golden Knights, to a degree, the Leafs as well, could probably all be linked in there to some capacity. They're all looking for help on the blue line, and he could very well be a good fit there with any of those clubs. So we'll see what happens, but Vatanen is still probably the top defenseman who has not been moved. Probably the top defenseman to keep your eye on here over the next couple of days leading into the deadline. Now, of course, lastly, I want to touch on the Pittsburgh Penguins and general manager Jim Rutherford. Of course, he kind of kicked things off and got the market started here by acquiring Jason Zucker from Minnesota a couple weeks ago, and that's certainly worked out quite nicely so far. And there are some rumblings that the Penguins very well could be looking to add some more, which includes potentially Joe Thornton. He's another player that's been linked to the Penguins. Now, of course, the Penguins aren't the only team that Jumbo Joe has been linked to. There's some talk about the Dallas Stars, possibly even the Colorado Avalanche. I think having Joe Pavelski in Dallas might help lure him to go there, should they decide they would like to inquire about bringing him over. But the Penguins are linked to Thornton. He's not the only player, though. They very well could be looking to add some other depth moves on the bottom six or in the defense. They have a banged-up blue line, and it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Rutherford go out and get a depth defenseman who could help here with the playoff push. The Penguins are in excellent shape to be a playoff team, just a matter of where exactly they're going to finish in the standings. But either way, once we get to playoff time, you can never count the Penguins out. I know they were swept last year. I'd be shocked if something like that happened again. But I do expect Rutherford to be busy and to continue to add some more depth ahead of the NHL deadline. So that is all your latest rumors for now. We'll be back when there's any breaking news on some more trades. Of course, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. What moves you think we're going to see between now and Monday, February the 24th at 3 Eastern, when the deadline closes. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.